Shortbox Nation, welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for being here. If you're new, well, welcome to the show. My name is Botter, and this is the Shortbox Podcast, the comic book talk show that brings you the best conversations about comic books with the people that put their blood, sweat, and tears into making them. This is episode 426, and today we've got one of my favorite. Today, I've got one of my favorite artists working in comics on the show today. His name is Sanford Greene, and he's been dominating the industry for a while now. He's the Eisner and Ring Award-winning co-creator and artist for the multi-award-winning Bitterroot comic series from Image Comics, which is also being adapted into a major motion picture by producer Ryan Coogler and director Regina King. Sanford Greene is also known for his work on titles like Black Panther and Power Man and Iron Fist for Marvel Comics. And whether you knew it or not, his fingerprints and artwork are all over Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse because he was one of the lead concept artists for that movie. Sanford is on the show today to talk about his new comic that's out this week, Doom #1. It's a Doctor Doom-centric comic that's being billed as the final fate of Doctor Doom. The one-shot takes place in the near future where Doom and Valeria Richards must stand against Galactus as he comes to devour Earth. Sanford Greene is co-writing the oversized one-shot alongside Jonathan Hickman, who is no stranger to Doom or Galactus. I think we give Jonathan Hickman his flowers every chance we get on this show, so you know I'm excited for that. Sanford is also doing all the interior art, including the cover and colors, alongside colorist Rochelle Rosenberg.
You heard that?
Yeah, just a little bit. All good, all good.
Sorry, that's me trying to move stuff around.
Oh, no, all good, all good.
Yeah.
Here, I'll wrap it up right here. I've had the opportunity to read the issue early, and I'm going to give a trigger warning before I say this, so prepare yourselves. I read the issue early, and if it's not the best Marvel comic you read all year, I guarantee it'll be a top 5 comic you read. I guarantee it'll be a top 5 comic by the end of the year. I foresee this making it on a lot of year-end lists. So don't say I didn't try and tell you, but you don't have to take my word for it. I'll have links to some preview pages you can check out alongside. Oh, what am I doing? I'm sorry. But you don't have to take my word for it. I'll have links to some preview pages you can check out alongside this interview in the show notes. Or you know what? You can actually go out and buy and read it for yourself right now because Doom #1 is available in shops at the time of this recording. And that's exactly why Sanford Greene is here today to talk about Doom and what else he's got going on in his world. Shortbox Nation, without further ado, let's welcome Sanford Greene to the show.
Oh, man. Wow, I'll tell you what. Do you want to go on a road with me for? You can be my PR guy.
Your MC? Yeah, that'd be a huge honor. I could definitely do that for you. That'd be dope.
Dude, you know, awesome.
Thank you so much, and it's well deserved, man. You have been crushing it lately. Like seriously, congrats on all the success.
Oh, thanks.
You know, speaking about being on the road, I was today years old learning that. The reason why I've seen you at every Heroes Con that I've been to, so I think I've been to like 3, 4, 5 now, is because you're one state away from North Carolina and in Charlotte where Heroes Con takes place. You're in South Carolina, right?
South Carolina, but not even just one state away, man. I'm like maybe an hour, give or take. I'm right there on the border of North Carolina, so it's not too far at all, and it's in the backyard, if you will. For sure.
Yeah. Now, is it safe to say, because Heroes Con is one of my favorite conventions, if not my favorite, and the vibe I always get from Heroes Con is that it is a destination for like a lot of comic creators, artists, and writers. They go there because it feels, like family. It's not as, massive and it's not as massive as like a New York Comic Con or San Diego Comic Con, respectfully, right?
Right.
Is it safe to say that like South Carolina, North Carolina, like the comic scene there is pretty good? Like, is it like if I was to make a trip to, obviously I've been to North Carolina plenty of times and hit up a few of the shops, like Heroes aren't hard to find, but how is the comic scene like in South Carolina? Like if you had to recommend a place for me to go, like do some comic book stuff, like what would you recommend?
Well, you said it, Heroes aren't hard to find. They're at the top of the list. Here in my state, we have Heroes and Dragons. There's an actual pretty unique collector shop, I guess, if you can call it that, called Scratch and Spin. So they kind of specialize in vinyl and from the music, more from the music aspects of things. But they have a pretty huge comic uh, feature in their store as well. Those guys are pretty awesome. So those two stores are right here in Columbia, where I live now. In Charleston, where I'm from, there's a few stores down there that's pretty cool. That would be coming from your neck of the woods. Probably you would get there before you get to Columbia. If you come from that side, 95 north, I guess.
Yep.
You can come by. You'll pass Charleston, and down there you have I think it's called Soundwave. They're in Somerville, and then you have Captain's Comics down there. Those guys are pretty awesome as well. So yeah, there's a few. Greenville, they have a few stores as well, but they're further north, obviously. Uh, the scene is pretty strong in South Carolina.
Now, that's a solid list. Most of the times when I ask that question, the writer, artist, or the creators I've interviewed will be like, I don't even leave the house because I'm so, busy with work. So I appreciate you giving me a really solid list there. I can't help but notice, and this is for if you're listening on the podcast version, I guess if you're watching the YouTube, you're seeing the same thing I'm seeing. And I can't help but notice your background. I love anytime that a creator's got like a cool background, and it looks like we're in your office here. But I see you've got a spinner rack to your camera left, and I see the iconic. I mean, you got some awesome issues on there. I see the Rick Remender Uncanny X Force issue, a GI Joe issue. But my eyeballs immediately went to this class. What is that? Uncanny X-Men number. Hard to tell. Which I know is a Jim Lee cover. Yeah, that one right there.
Yeah. That's 275. That's
275. Yeah,
that's a pretty popular issue.
Well, I got to ask then. Are you caught up on X-Men 97?
No.
Oh, Sanford, you're breaking my heart. Oh my God!
Don't spoil it for me. I did get to episode 5, which is the one. That's the one.
Oh, that is the one.
That is the one.
That is the one. That is the red. Yeah, that's the red wedding of.
That's the red wedding. That's a good example. That's a good example of what that episode represents. That was. When I saw, you try to avoid all the spoilers online,
which is not easy with this show, right?
It's not easy. I was pretty successful at that, but I will say, I kind of knew it would be that character because I saw a few like tributes to the character, but I did not know of how it would all transpire, and that part was pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, and I appreciate you practicing spoiler free. As much as I want to just like go off and start screaming on how good it was, like,
Right.
but overall, it sounds like are you enjoying it? Like, is it bringing back any memories of X-Men comics you've picked up and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely enjoying it, man. Actually, shout outs to Chase Conley, who's one of the directors. I've known that cat since he was up and coming. He's now arrived, I would say safely. He's a pretty incredible illustrator, artist in his own right. And to see that he's able to now, for the most part, spearhead the look and the direction that this animation is going is pretty awesome. Also, there's a few other folks that I know that have worked on the series, so it's kind of cool to kind of have kind of a backseat, or not necessarily a backseat, but kind of a behind the scenes look to know what they've worked on and how it all transpired. That's pretty special stuff.
The topic of new, I guess like up and coming artists, I couldn't help but also notice on the spinner rack. I think I'm gonna bring up the spinner rack this entire interview, so be ready for it. I see that you got a copy of La Mano del Destino, which is done by comic creator Jay Gonzo. Had him on the show a couple of episodes back. He's Awesome. And,
Hmm.
speaking of Heroes Con, he's someone I got to meet at Heroes Con. I picked up that entire series.
Hmm.
Um, how in tune are you with like, I guess, do you have time to check for new artists? And I guess like how often are you checking for new artists? And, like where do you find new artists and inspiration?
Um, a lot of what you said at comic shows, trade shows, that's where I find most of the new talent. It's kind of cool. It's one thing to go through Instagram, or you just kind of search or surf through Instagram. That's cool, but it's something extra special to be able to go to a convention and discover someone and have a conversation with that person and actually pick up some work and support them. So that's where I get my most
Hmm.
enjoyment, discovering new talent.
Hell yeah. Do you recall like I guess what's your earliest memory or your earliest art memory? Do you have something that sticks out to you? Like, do you remember the first drawing or illustration you did that you were like, "Oh, this is not half bad. I think I'm gonna go ahead and pursue this as as a job."
Wow. I think I can share this story of when it wasn't my first art memory, but it was definitely one that stood out to me in terms of the significance of it. And that is when I think it was third grade, fourth grade, somewhere around that time. And I participated in this art contest um, for having a safe Halloween. This is during the time where uh, there was big campaigns on just not taking candy from strangers. I
Hmm.
think that's honestly where the motto came from. It was during that time period. Just watching out, whatever the theme was overall, it was about safety. Most kids did just a single illustration. But again, this is the third grade, I think. I was already inundated with comic books, and I tried to draw my own comic. I did a short comic and submitted this comic to for the contest, and the judges didn't believe I did it. They
Oh
thought
wow.
they thought it might have been someone older, and because they just didn't think someone would try to this young would try to put together something um, that quote unquote advanced. And so they had me come to, I guess, the place where they did the judging for the
Hmm.
contest, and they had me draw. They had me draw the characters that I created. They had me draw the characters that I created just to see. And
Yeah.
that honestly happened because my art teacher at the time, Deborah Burrell, she was my elementary uh, teacher, but she also was an artist, and she saw that I had that interest, and so
Hmm.
she called my mom. She was very upset because she was like, I can't believe these people aren't believing that you did it, but if you can you come? You have the time, come down to, I guess, the local town hall, and can you do a demonstration for them? And so I did a demonstration,
Yeah.
for these folks, and yeah, that was a moment where I thought I was like, okay, I might have something
Oh,
a
for
little,
sure.
yeah, yeah.
Like growing up and being just a complete nightmare in school. One of my biggest fears was having my mom being called to the school, because I knew that it would just mean automatic. I'm getting an ass whooping when I get home. If my mom has to come to the school, it's a wrap. I'm done. But I can only imagine the confusion and maybe anger she'd have if she had to be called to the town hall for her son.
Right. I mean, look, dude.
That's wild.
I mean, the way that my teacher was explaining it to her. I mean, she was calm, but she was
Yeah.
also like, "Can you believe this? I can't believe."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so but shout outs to my mom for having enough awareness to realize that this
Hmm.
could be something important. She could, like you said, I don't have time to do that. I got,
Yeah.
luckily it was after hours. It was after work. It was like 6 in the evening, but still, you're home, or you just got off work and you got dinner to make, whatever, and but for some reason, she had I guess, the wherewithal to take me down there. I don't think
Awesome.
I've ever shared that story before, so it's pretty wild.
I appreciate the exclusive then.
Yeah, you got an
And
exclusive.
you know what? Shout outs to mom. We're recording this on Wednesday, May 9th. Sunday will be Mother's Day. So big shout outs to your mom and all the moms out there.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, growing up, was art like in your household? Like, was there anyone else in your family or maybe in your friend circle that were like artistically talented, or could you point to maybe you mentioned like you were already inundated with comic books? Were there artists that you were maybe really inspired by young, and maybe like you were trying to mimic, or maybe their style found a way into yours early on?
Um, yes to all of that. I was influenced by a lot of what I saw. Saturday morning cartoons obviously
Hmm.
was a big impact. I had a family member who was a fashion designer in New
Oh,
York.
cool.
I met him once. Um, he wasn't very friendly. I just remember that. I mean, I guess he's a fashion designer, and obviously he was older, so um, I just didn't have any connection outside of that from family in terms of that aspect of it. But in terms of influences, absolutely, just what I saw on television, again, Saturday morning cartoons was a huge influence. And of course, I connected the dots to what I saw on television and how I discovered comics. The comics were, at that time, you could get them um, at drugstore. I think you could still, yeah, you could have still gotten them at drugstores. There were the comic shops that just started, but they weren't anywhere near where I lived. But uh, I saw those comics and I connected the dots to uh, how those comics and those characters were the same characters that I saw on television. So that blew my mind because I didn't think I thought the cartoons were kind of this thing on its own, and there wasn't anything connected
Hmm.
to it. Maybe toys, but the comic side was just completely brand new. So
Really quick, what were some of those? What were some of those cartoons you were watching, or what were some of the comic books in your life at that time?
the cartoons, the mainstays, the Spider-Man, Amazing Friends,
Okay.
the Super Friends were kind of they were on the way out, um, and anime started to creep in just a little. You had those cartoons that were influenced by anime, like the Thundercats,
Hmm.
um, 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 and of course Transformers. Those shows like that were the ones that stood out. And then, of course, anime discovered that there were cartoons that were Japanese produced, like Battle of the Planets, Robotech, and
Hmm.
then Dragon Ball started to play a part as well. And yeah, I started to look for the comics that had a lot of that kind of aesthetic, lots of characters, lots of action. So that obviously X-Men is probably the greatest through line to that type of aesthetic. Those characters um, resembled the most to the anime aesthetic, if you will. Very grounded, but high level uh, action. So that those are the ones that I gravitated towards.
Now, as far as like artists at the time that you were seeing in these comics, you're bringing up X Men, so I'm assuming it was probably around the John Byrne, Chris Claremont era.
Yep, yep,
Okay.
hmm
Okay. Was
yeah.
there any other artists that you were really impressed by or really influenced by early on?
From the comic side,
Hmm.
definitely. Um, shortly after. discovering the John Burns and the artists of that nature, Michael Golden
Mm.
became someone that I gravitated towards. And shortly, actually, it's kind of reversed. I started to get into Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee and those guys, and they referred to their influences a lot towards um, Art Adams
Mm.
and Michael Golden. So I went back and researched those guys, and I ate it up. I mean, look, Rob Liefeld was huge coming up as well because I saw the Art Adams influence in what he was doing. So, um, yeah, huge impact around that time.
Hmm. I'm going to fast forward a little just because I want to make sure we have time to talk about Doom. But do you recall what was like your first comic book project, like maybe your first professional one, or the one that like you felt most proud of, or the one that kind of got you in? Because the earliest that I could find was on, or at least on the Marvel site that it credits, is you did interior artwork for a Star Wars Tales comic, number 13. It
Oh
was released
wow.
in 2002. It features
Hmm.
Mace Windu on the cover,
Yeah.
and it credits you as the interior artist. Is that the earliest comic work you've done, or is there anything earlier than that?
There's things earlier than that, but I don't want to mention that stuff, man. You might go find it. You might go find it
Yeah.
and put it out there.
Look, it'll still be
But
leaps and bounds better than what I could possibly ever do. But
oh well, hey.
I guess when you hear Star Wars, that particular issue, like, do any memories come from that particular issue, Star Wars Tales number 13?
Um, just the fact that Star Wars was making its return
Oh
to
yeah.
the big screen, so that was huge. And of course, Mace Windu being a Jedi and he's black. All of those things were huge. Um, as a matter of fact, I thought about a cool idea for a new story that I would like to tell. I'm not
Hmm.
as well versed in the Star Wars mythos, if you will, but yeah, that time was pretty huge. I knew that those touchstones were very important around that time, and to be able to tell a story. I can't look at the art, but it was pretty awesome. It's pretty
Yeah.
awesome to know that I had and that was honestly there wasn't much before that. There really maybe one or two things, but there were things that were like pinups. I did some work with actually I did some work with Transformers.
Oh wow.
When Dreamwave, I think Dream,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember those guys.
Dreamwave. Hell
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I remember that was a studio that kind of got a lot of the folks that are kind of mainstays right now in the industry. That was some of their first work. I remember, I think Mark Brooks had his first work in there. Uh,
Yeah. Those guys had
that,
I
yeah.
think I know they had the Transformers line. I want to say they also had and I might be confusing with like DreamWorks or not DreamWorks, but the other one that starts with a D. A
Oh,
Wildstorm. Yeah, with
Devils
that
too.
one too. Man,
Devils
there's
too.
so many, I
Yeah,
guess, indie publishers from that like early 2000s that are no longer here. But those
yeah.
covers still like I can close my eyes now and vividly like recall going through short
Hmm.
boxes of Transformer comics, Thundercats comics, like
Hmm.
all of these kind of all these 80s cartoon IP comics that are interestingly enough like seeing a whole new renaissance like today, right? Like,
Right.
Thundercats is a new comic series now. Transformers and Daniel Warren Johnson is killing it. So it's
Hmm.
interesting to see like how those IPs have bounced around and where they're at now, and
Hmm.
like that nostalgia factor bringing everyone
Hmm.
back to it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it seems to happen in like 20-year cycles, I guess.
Good way. Yeah, good
Um,
point.
um, yeah, so uh, it's pretty cool.
Now, you mentioned, having a story to tell, in the Star Wars space, and if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's kind of where Doom #1 comes from, right? Like it was,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm reading all the solicitations and the press releases right, this was a story that you had in mind
Mm-hmm.
that you wanted to tell. And I understand that you reached out to Jonathan Hickman
Mm-hmm.
about hopping on there, being a co-writer,
Mm-hmm.
and we get the project here. I want to hear, I guess, like if you want to fill in any of the cracks in terms of like how this story came to you. But while you're thinking of that, if you don't mind, I want to read the solicitation just to level set for anyone that is maybe that hasn't seen the solicitation or doesn't know about it here. But this official solicitation for Doom #1 reads: In the near future, Doom alone must save the Marvel Universe. Legendary creators Jonathan Hickman and Sanford Greene send Doctor Doom on a journey unlike any he has undertaken before. With Larry Richards at his side, Doom goes on a quest to harness more power than any human has ever wielded before in order to try to stop Galactus from bringing about the death of the universe. Um, do you want to fill in anything? Do you want to add anything else to that solicitation? I guess from your perspective, how did the story come about? How long have you been sitting on this story for? What was the catalyst to finally get it out into the world?
I was sharing this with another interview that I was doing last week, and one of the things that I realized as a kid, I was fascinated with um, the comics that had lots of characters in them. I was, of course, X-Men, Avengers, um, and to some degree, the Fantastic Four. Um, and then there was this book called Secret Wars that really
Classic.
opened the door for me in terms of like seeing all these heroes come together. Um, and you could argue that that was kind of the first crossover to some degree, to where you had every character um, from every part of the Marvel universe coming together, and Doom was at the center of this thing. And so, and reading that as a kid, again, kind of reverse engineering, I go back and I try to find other comics that had this character, Doctor Doom, and it was like shooting a fish in a barrel. It was like
Hmm.
it was just he was everywhere, and I'm like, wow, how come? Again, I was still young, but in my head, I'm like, I know uh, all the heroes, but this guy seems to be just as important as the heroes. And this is in my mind as a 9, 10 year old, right? And ever since then, I just had this fascination with the character, with Doom, because he has touched every corner of the Marvel universe. Um, Even with the X-Men, you think about uh, their greatest adversaries. Doom was right there at the early stages of their encounters with him. So he's not just a Fantastic Four villain or what have you, but he is like the Marvel's quintessential adversary. Not to mention the fact that he's a leader, monarch, if you will, and how that affects the the Marvel universe. He's on the same level in terms of regalness as a Black
Hmm.
Panther with Wakanda. If you really think how he's revered in his own
Yeah.
Latveria, so it's like there's so many different pieces. Not to mention, I say this jokingly, but it really is a powerful thing with all of this reverence that you can have for this character through his regalness, his hubris. Um, he loves his mama. Like there's this side of him that you just get a hint of when you see his connections to his mother. Something that 99% of us can relate to. We can't relate to being a monarch, but we can relate to looking out for moms. So that part even made me
Hmm.
just think, well, what is it about that changes him or turns him into, for lack of better words, to uh, his mother's son versus being wanting to be the dictator of the entire universe. If he
Hmm.
could make that happen, that's what he would do. So again, all these questions, all these things that I'm gathering over the years, and one day I just thought to myself, man, there should be a story about Doom in all of this stuff, like this kind of bringing it all together. Obviously, there's a million stories about Doom, but what about these things and making it one kind of come all together? It can be the type of thing that could bring the entire universe to its knees on some level, or it could possibly save the universe. Then I discovered, not discovered, but then I started thinking, but what if it all happens all together, where it causes destruction, but it's the very thing that could save the universe? This character, Doom, he's probably one, if not the only character that has that dichotomy, if you will, because he's not completely evil. He has those tendencies, but then those tendencies are curved and bent into some kind of honorable uh, method, if you will, that he goes about his business. So you as a reader, you kind of co-sign to some of that. Like, okay, I can understand when you have to, all right, that's a little too excessive over here, but over here, okay. So there again, there's this beautiful mixture of that twists this character in ways that very few characters have.
I think you described Doctor Doom excellent. Yeah, that was perfectly said. He's such a nuanced character,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's safe to say he is easily a top. I don't know. I think it's safe to say Doctor Doom is a top three supervillain. And if we're
Mm-hmm.
talking just Marvel, I'm talking like across comic books. And I think if we're
Mm-hmm.
talking, just Marvel comics, it'd be very hard pressed to find anyone that's taken the number one spot from him.
Right.
So it's cool to hear that you've had that this story has been kind of lingering in your mind for this many years. And, it's based on all these questions that you've had just kind of compounded and compiled throughout the years and as a fan. And I guess I'm going to toss you a very, I don't know, a layup question here, but what was the inspiration to, I feel like I know the answer, but what was the inspiration to reach out to Jonathan Hickman to get him to help and co-write the story as well?
Oh, I just wanted to give him a shot. I mean, he's been trying.
I thought you were going to say, if you would have replied with, Botter, did you read Secret Wars from 2015? Do I need to say less? If you would have just said that, it would have been good.
Yeah. Well, that's the answer that you were expecting, right? Of course, that's part of why I wanted him, because that story, that arc was such a impactful
Hmm.
story.
Like a
It laid
modern classic.
It's
That,
just a
that to me
modern.
is like truly a modern classic.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I've known Jonathan for a long time, and we're from the same neck of the woods,
Hmm.
um, and we've often had conversations about coming together at some point and working on something. Um, and this happens to be a thing where I was trying to write it, and there were so many things, so many avenues I wanted to go down, and I started feeling like I was spreading the story too far, and I
Hmm.
needed to bring it together. And I I was talking to Will Moss, and he said, "Well, do you think you need some help? Maybe bring in someone that can help you kind of pull this together." And I'm like, "Oh, I got the perfect person, and that's Jonathan, if he's willing to do it." I know his schedule is absolutely insane, um, and uh, he I reached out to him, and pretty much without question, he was like, "Yeah, man, let's do it."
Hmm.
And there's something that's really cool, and I've shared this on other interviews, that he's Jonathan Hickman, right? I mean, this guy is multi, award winning. That I think he's won a bunch, and even if he hasn't,
He
he
absolutely
should.
has. Yeah.
He
Yeah.
should. And I mean, the guy is the architect of the Marvel universe at this point, right?
It damn sure feels like it.
Yeah,
To me, Jonathan Hickman is someone that if I see his name, it's like instant buy. And if it's on a Marvel title, it's like this
sure.
is the bar is here. You
The
know, for
bar, the
the audio
bar,
listeners, it's very high.
right? And I say this, with all sincerity. He really was very adamant to let me tell the story.
Hmm.
He could have easily look. This is my first foray into the actual writing side of things.
Yeah.
Um, and it was a bit intimidating because he's now in the room, and his thoughts and his
Hmm.
opinions or what have you can be, it can make or break you to some degree. And but every turn he was very mindful of all of those things concerning me. He thought it was a great story, and he wanted me to tell the story. He said, "Okay, what else do you have in mind for this certain moment in the story?" Um, I will give him, and this I'm just sharing vague because it's a lot of things that could
Yeah,
uh,
sure.
spoil. But I would give my thoughts on how I wanted to tell it, or give my version of the story. And he says to me, "Okay, cool, all right, I'll just follow your lead." And I'm like, "Wow, that was such a it was very um, I guess the word is humbling, but it was also it shows me why he is where he is in many ways, because he knows when to be assertive, but he also knows when, okay, you might have a better direction. I'll just take a back seat. I'm not going to let my reputation or what have you get in the way of you really doing the thing that you have the desire to do. So yeah, I mean, that's been probably I shared this before. This collaboration has been one of the greatest experiences I've ever had in this industry. Um, that's saying a lot. I've worked with
Yeah.
a lot of great folks, but this was pretty awesome. I
Damn.
finished I finished this story, and they wanted to do the story got to be so rich that people got excited at Marvel, and they wanted to turn it into a mini. And I said, you know what? I think I'm good. I don't want to.
Wow.
There was something in me that said, you know what? Knock it out the park and drop the mic and walk away. If you will, if that can be expressed that way.
No, for
Be,
sure.
you
And you
know,
know what? You actually answered one of my questions because I mean,
yeah.
no spoilers, obviously, but it ends in a way that the door is left open. Where I mean, it's no secret. It's a one shot. It's an oversized one shot.
Hmm.
It's to me, it's a couple pages shy of being, a graphic novel, but it
Hmm.
ends in a way that is, it leaves the door open. And I was going to ask if you had more story to tell, or more story that's set in this universe. But I really respect that you took the artistic high road. And because I mean, let's be real. If it's Marvel asking you to make it a mini, they probably, backed up a money truck. Like, we can make this a mini, but I respect that, you've told the story you wanted to tell,
Yeah.
and, you're going to let that breathe.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and let's be honest, Marvel, or any of the big, companies, the corporate companies,
Hmm.
they have invested interests from that side monetarily. So it's not there's no secret about that, and you can respect that, um, and you can kind of if they you can kind of fall into
Oh
that
yeah.
that 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 direction if you're just thinking in that term. You can see, oh wow, this could be this big thing that could be. But I'm like, let me just take a step back and understand that, what do I really 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 want from this thing versus what is kind of hitting me right in,
Mhm.
on the surface level, um, that immediate thing. So trust me, it took a minute to get my heart and my head in the right place. But
Yeah, yeah. That's funny.
yeah.
No, I look, and I'm glad you clarified that this is your first, like, real and official foray into writing. I don't want to misspeak. I figured as much, but I didn't want to misspeak. And I guess
Hmm.
hearing you talk about, clarify that, w- do you want to do more writing, like, or do you prefer, doing the artwork and things like that? Because that is one thing about this issue that I notice is you're involved in pretty much every phase, from the cover art, the interior art, co-writing, you even co-colorist as well. Like, what was the biggest I guess what's the biggest lesson you've learned from writing this issue? Like, do you have a new respect or a new perspective on what goes into writing?
Um, I definitely want to and will be writing more.
Awesome.
I do think that um, Hickman told me this years ago, and this is another reason why I wanted to work with him, because he said, "Shoot, dude, you can write," and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Oh, yeah, you got a story. Everyone has a story.
Hmm.
Just start writing, and you put it down on paper, and without boring you with details." He kind of gave me these touchstone points that it just made sense. I'm like, yeah, that is kind of true.
Hmm.
Obviously, you need to learn, you know, how to tie things together and all those things that make a writer, one of the, make a writer a good writer.
Hmm.
That's why Jonathan is such a incredible writer, is that he can plant a seed from something that happened, 5 years ago and
Oh
bring
my
it
God, yeah.
full circle
A-
now,
And
right? Yeah.
and the multi layers, right? Like the
Yeah.
layers to his storytelling, and
Hmm.
the most minutia thing has got all this nuance and meaning, and you're like, I think I might need a guidebook for this comic book. Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing that's kind of cool. That's why I wanted to work with him, because I wanted to see how he processes stuff. And
Hmm.
truth be told, it's really simple, which makes it very complex because he's, he can, he just sit, whatever the story you want to tell, he doesn't, he'll ask questions about it. And once he gets an understanding, he's like, oh, okay, all right, so let's just go. And so that's the first layer of understanding of writing, is that, all right, what kind of story do I want to tell? All right, let's just go. That doesn't necessarily mean it will end the way that I'm thinking that, currently, but you have to start it. And I think that's the most important thing anyone could do.
Awesome. I want to shift to talking about the art because Sanford, if I'm being real, and I say this like with full respect, this might be some of the best artwork I've ever seen from you. Like
Oh, no doubt.
it is insanely good, and I mean, there's a lot of different things I could talk about the art. I'm gonna just pick two right now. The
Hmm.
amount of characters that you pack into this issue.
Hmm.
I don't think. I mean, I was like, I don't think he missed anyone in the Marvel universe, right? Like the Marvel universe is giant, and I feel like you pretty much got 80% of them in here. So it was awesome to see your interpretation of the characters I've never seen you draw before. To see like the cameos, and you've got some amazing like 2 page, almost damn near 4 page spread. I think if you were to really like lay it out flat, it'd be like a 4 or 5 page spread. And then the action too. Like it is so bombastic. It's like a great blend of like a poignant story that gets you thinking about Doom, his place in the world, and even Galactus to a large extent as well. But the action in it, man, is so fucking dope. And I'm sorry to curse it, and for lack of better term, it's just dope. It's
I
fucking
appreciate
dope.
it. Appreciate it.
And I gotta ask because I got some heavy because I'm hearing you talk about your early influences with anime and cartoons, and you brought up Dragon Ball, and that is one place my mind immediately went to reading this. There's a lot of big energy blasts
Hmm.
and the fight choreography and sequences had
Hmm.
me thinking like, I wonder if Sanford was watching Dragon Ball Z in the background while he was drawing this. Like, what were you consuming or looking to, or what do you feel like crept its way in as far as inspiration? Like, am I far off thinking like the manga and anime influences there?
Definitely, man. I wasn't watching Dragon Ball, but I was definitely making the Dragon Ball sound effects, I guess, in my mind, and
Like
you
we all
know,
tend to do.
yeah,
Yeah.
like we all tend to do. That whole, like as a kid, you're in your
Come
toy
on.
box,
Yeah.
and you get the two characters colliding, clashing, and you're making all the bombastic sound effects and what have you. That's honestly where it was where it was for me. Yeah, just I was a kid in my mind, and like what's the most insane thing that you can think of that would be so cool just to convey on paper, and that's where it all went.
Yeah, it's a fun comic book. It's a gorgeous comic book to look at. I feel like I've been preaching about it all week because you were kind enough to send me the advanced review, and I was at my comic shop yesterday talking to the owner, and I was like, "Look, when you get this Doom issue, be prepared for it to fly off the shelf because once people read it and it gets out, it's going to be major."
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, like, how long did it take? Because I mean, you like I said, you draw so much. It is such a packed issue. It never feels like claustrophobic or too much. It's like the right amount, and I
Mm-hmm.
think the story warrants it. Right? I think
Mm-hmm.
Hickman says in a press release, like we're dealing with. I'm paraphrasing, but like we're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with a big character, and the story is really big. How
Mm-hmm.
long did the I guess like was it a difficult task to do all the interior artwork? Like what are we talking like timeline wise? Like how much time do you think you spent on the on it on the entire project?
Man, honestly, once I so behind me, I have my sketchbook.
Hmm.
In the sketchbook, I try to sketch every Marvel character I can think of.
Wow.
I went through the. I have my encyclopedia handbook of the Marvel Universe. I went through that. Of course, Secret Wars. I went through all these big stories that had a lot of characters, and I just started jotting down all the characters from different corners of the Marvel universe, everything from the street level to the
Mhm.
inner
The
planet,
cosmic
the
deities and all
cosmic,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
all the cosmic deities. And I once I honestly, that's how the story even started for me as far as writing the story. I just started writing characters down, and I'm like, okay, this group of characters will be great for this scene, and this group of characters will be great for that scene. And it all to start. At least that was the basic framework, and then I started putting in the uh, the more nuanced parts to it, especially um, with Doom and Valeria and their relationship. Because ultimately, yes, you have Galactus, and yes, he's wrecking shop, and he's this he's this force of nature, this galactic hurricane that just keeps building from point two, from 2.0 to 3.0 to
Oh yeah.
5.0. He just gets more and more devastating. And the greater the devastation, the greater the stakes with all these characters. So you have all this stuff going on, and right in the middle of that is Doom and Valeria having these this uncle niece, you know, connection that helps make sense of why Doom is able to go about the mission. He's reminded in a weird kind of way. She admires the fact that he has the hubris that he has,
Mhm.
and so even in a moment of unclarity, he begins to be reminded of he who he is, and
Yeah.
that part was cool.
I will say, as much as I loved all the action and the cameos, the quiet moments between Valeria and Doom. Man, you nailed it, right? Like that. I feel like anytime those two are in a comic book together, I really try to pay attention. I really judge, that interaction in a book on the dialogue. They have such a unique way of the way they converse with one another, right? Like you've got this monarch, this super villain, and then you've got like this young child that's a genius. And I think you get in the hands of a really good writer, you get some amazing dialogue and magic if you know how to handle them. And I give you props, like you and Hickman definitely brought you know you guys brought your A game on even like those quiet moments and like that character moments between the two.
Mm. Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah. I was going to ask you something else. Well, I guess in terms of Galactus, this is probably the most uh, dangerous Galactus we've seen in a minute. Like not to spoil anything, it's we're seeing Galactus. I think you guys described in the book like this is a Galactus consumed by the hunger. Like instead
Mm-hmm.
of being on the defense and taking his time preserving his energy, he's on the hunt. He's actively destroying planets and worlds, and he's got a larger scheme in
Mm-hmm.
mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it funny that 15 minutes before we were supposed to record, the news of Galactus being casted in the new Fantastic Four movie was
Mm-hmm.
announced. For anyone that maybe missed the boat, Ralph Ineson is being cast as Galactus. He's from Harry Potter fame. He is an
Mm-hmm.
English actor,
Mm-hmm.
and he's got this amazing, like really gravelly, deep, like Yorkshire
Mm-hmm.
accent. So I think I'm going to be
Mm-hmm.
curious how they have
Mm-hmm.
him play Galactus. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, I don't even know if I have a question for that other than I'm pretty excited for like, as the casting for this movie comes out is getting me more hype and I was curious like what is your when you think of I guess to bring it back to Doom. I'm sorry. I brought up Galactus just to subvert it to go back to Doom, but I really want to hear this because I'm hearing you talk about your affinity for Doom, and I'm thinking to myself like, where does my mind go? What images and covers does my mind go when I think of Doctor Doom? And there's two specifically. I think it's because you brought up Secret Wars.
Yep.
I think about that iconic cover of him on issue 10 where
Yep.
his suit and clothes are
Yep.
tattered and he's got his energy blast in a hand and I think he's about to fight the Beyonder in that. And
Yep.
then the second one, maybe because we're talking about Hickman, is I'm thinking of that iconic panel where God Emperor Doom rips Thanos skull spine
Mm.
out of his body.
Yeah.
I want to hear. I'll toss the question to you. Like, what are some iconic or images that come to mind when you think of Doctor Doom that have just kind of been living in your head, rent free all this time?
Honestly, you can find them those scenes on the cover to Doom. Um, that
That is right.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's right. You have a
yeah,
lot of Easter eggs on that cover.
yeah.
I forgot. There's like the different moments and iconic. Yeah, this really is a love. I think I heard you describe it. This comic is a love letter to Doctor Doom.
That's exactly what it is, man. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Him, issue 10 of Secret Wars. That cover, um, that was the cover that made me really, and I'm young. I'm still what
Hmm.
10 years old, but I'm looking at this cover, and I'm like, I've never seen a cover like that before, where this character. I'm like, you sure he's a villain? He seems so, but it was again, it wasn't about good or evil. It was about him and his defiance and
Yeah.
his hubris, and how he is so resolute on his objective. A god can barely kill this guy,
Hmm.
which is, which at that time, Beyonder, um, you could say was one of those characters, most powerful characters of that time,
Oh,
and
for sure.
he's standing toe to toe to this guy, or or at least on one knee. Everyone else is dead, but he's still holding on. And
Yeah.
honestly, that image was kind of the image that sparked this whole story to some degree. Like, what? How could he, out of all the characters in the Marvel universe, be the one still standing?
Hmm.
What is it about this character that allows him to still be standing? Yeah, powers, magic, whatever, but there's something deeper, um, and that's how he perceives himself and how he views himself. That's more powerful than any superpower, if you will. That is a superpower. Like,
Yeah.
no other character really has that. Not on that level.
Hmm.
Maybe Namor. He might be the closest, but even with him, he can go off
Yeah.
on the. He gets
Yeah.
distracted. He gets distracted a lot.
I think that word defiance is excellent to describe Doctor Doom. Like that defiance and an insane willpower, like the
Mm-hmm.
willpower that he's got in that focus. And I
Mm-hmm.
think you could also maybe you could definitely attribute a lot of those attributes to someone like Namor. But I think what Doctor Doom's got is just He's got cool point, like infinite cool points. It's something about Doctor Doom really is the whole package.
Hmm.
Attitude, background. There's that empathetic factor you brought up,
Hmm.
like his love of his mom. Love of his mom. Sorry, not with it, but his love of his
Hmm.
mom. He even went to hell for her. Like
Right.
his power set. He's a genius. He's got technology. He's also into sorcery and dark magic. Like he
Hmm.
really is the complete package, and I feel like it's safe to say that you have been inside of the mind of this character probably for like weeks, if not months, maybe even years now. And I think I've got a question for you that I think you might be the perfect person to answer. I mentioned that I went into my local comic shop last week. The shop is called Gotham City Limit. They're full disclaimer, they're a sponsor of this show.
Cool.
They're big supporters of what we do here, and obviously they love comics as much as we do, if not more. And the owner of the shop, his name is Ben Kingsbury. I allow him every now and then to send in voicemails anytime I have a creator on. And I asked him to send in one for you today, Sanford. And I think you're going to get a kick out of this question as someone
Okay.
that's been, that at this point, you could probably confidently say you're a Doctor Doom expert. So I'm going to go ahead and cue this up for you.
All right.
Hey, Sanford, Ben K, Gotham City Limit, Jacksonville, Florida. Thanks so much for taking some time to answer my very, very important question. So, we love to rock some AC/DC while we're comic buying down here at the Limit. And one of the reasons is because of the overwhelming success of the original Marvel Cinematic Universe. When we think of Iron Man, we now think of Thunderstruck by AC/DC. I think Doctor Doom has that potential. So here's my question. In the MCU future potential Doctor Doom, Iron Man is to Thunderstruck as Doctor Doom is to what potential song? I'll leave you to answer. Thanks so much for making awesome comics. We couldn't do it without you. And remember, Short Box Nation, always take it to the limit.
There we go. That was Ben K of Gotham City Limit with another. He's always setting out of the box question. That's why I always,
Yeah.
reach
Yeah.
out to him for this one. So, just to recap that question, maybe
Hmm.
give a little more context too.
Hmm.
If you walk into Gotham City Limit any time of the day, I don't care if you're there first thing in the morning at 11 o'clock or you're there at 6 p.m. as they're closing. 99.999% chance Ben's got AC/DC playing. He has got me trained to where as I'm going to the shop, I immediately start humming Thunderstruck. I mean, I've heard more AC/DC in my lifetime than maybe anyone else on the planet, and I can
Hmm.
only imagine how many times Ben has heard that song.
Hmm.
So I guess what would be the song for Doctor Doom if AC/DC Thunderstruck is to Iron Man thanks to the movies?
Oh my gosh, man! Wow. I have two lanes of thought in terms of
Okay.
music wise. Hmm. I I immediately started thinking about anything Black Sabbath for some reason.
Mm.
Um, because of just the tone. The tone of it is dark and brooding, and it's not high level. It's just kind of like this low. It can be high level. Energy, but there's something about Black Sabbath music that sticks out to me in terms of the sound. And that can be any of the Touchstone songs. I'm not as well versed into metal as I am to hip hop or what have you. Now there is a song by MF Doom called Supervillain that is, just look it up. Now, mind you, it doesn't, but it almost kind of works though. Now that I'm listening to the song in my mind, um, it's heavy drums and just thumping drums behind, and the piano sound is very aggressive in
Hmm.
the samples. Um, so yeah, those two. As a matter of fact, I think I used that MF Doom track to promote some stuff on Instagram a while back.
Those are some solid choices, and I want to say you brought up MF Doom, and I'm not going to spoil it for any other hip hop heads that go pick up this issue. Just know that, Sanford, I see you. I tip my hat. I thank you for the opening line of that comic book. And for anyone that goes to pick up that issue, I'm in such a good mood. if when you go pick up that issue and you recognize the opening line of that book, whoever sends me an email first and tells me what song Sanford used in that, I'll send you guys a free comic. I've got plenty to send you guys. I'll send you something from Gotham City Limit. But let me know. But Sanford, just know that I appreciate that you managed to inject hip hop, and as just whether it be blatant, and in this case of this Doom, very obvious, or even like subtly from a stylistic and thematic perspective into all of your work. There's a certain like grittiness and fluidity to your artwork that I hopefully it just comes off as respectfully. It just reminds me of hip hop. It just gives me that essence and as someone that's look, it's comics as 1A and hip hop as 1B in terms of like love of my life.
Yep.
And obviously my fiance, 1AA, but so I really appreciate how you inject the things that you're into and especially hip hop. So thank you for that. And I just remembered the question I wanted to ask you and why I brought up that Galactus casting is that they haven't announced. So they haven't announced the casting for Doom yet, and I think it's safe to say that is what a lot of people are waiting on is who are they going to cast for Doctor Doom? And I'm curious if you had the opportunity to cast anyone that you wanted to, your personal casting, who are some names that come to mind in terms of actors that could portray Doctor Doom right?
It's kind of he's already been cast as a character. As Magneto, actually. Oh gosh, what's the actor's name? He was.
You're talking about Michael Fassbender or Ian McKellen?
Oh, okay. Michael Fassbender.
Okay.
I thought he would have been great, and obviously he was great as Magneto as well. But he was the first person I thought of, and this is a while ago. This is back when the ill-fated Fantastic Four film.
Which one? The one with Michael B. Jordan or the ones with Jessica Alba?
The Jessica Alba one.
Got it.
That around that time, and it was like, oh my God, can we get someone outside of the WB? Actors that lineage of actors from that time period. They were like the ones that were picked for all this stuff, and it was just kind of a odd campy choice, but hey, 10 years prior you never thought you would have gotten any of that stuff.
True.
So they say it takes a miracle to make a film. I know this firsthand with all the stuff that's happening with Bitterroot. I mean, good stuff, but it's a lot of stuff, a lot of things. To see all these films that's been produced by Marvel over the last 25 years, it's been pretty amazing.
I think the three names that come to mind for me are Mads Mikkelsen. There's something just so cunning and just unique about him. I think Giancarlo Esposito would make a fantastic Doctor, like an older kind of Doctor Doom.
That's very interesting. I didn't think him for sure. He could be a great villain, but I just couldn't. What's the third one?
And what is it? Cillian Murphy, I think that's how you say his name. Cillian Murphy, I think would be pretty fire.
I thought he would be a great Silver Surfer for some reason. I think.
Man,
that'd be kind of cool.
That'd be cool. Yeah. All right, so you brought up Bitterroot. We're talking Hollywood, and this question is I put this in honor to my man Walter Gant, who texted me and said, if you don't ask him about Bitterroot, we're no longer friends. So I got to ask, your pinned tweet on Twitter is one from 2022, and it's an announcement about Bitterroot Omnibus. It's coming out. It's got a short story that'll tie into the family's past history for the next chapter of Bitterroot. I guess, to put it bluntly, like, what can fans expect from Bitterroot next? Like, is it coming back in comic book form? Is there any update on the movie? I know you've got Ryan Coogler and Regina King attached, but it's been at least 1 or 2 years since we heard any update. Can you share anything?
As far as the film, not much on that, but there is a script. We saw the
Oh,
script.
awesome.
The script I think it got approved. A few tweaks here and there on some things. But in terms of the comic, there will be a comic as well. The next generation will be introduced. We hope to have some cool stuff to show by San Diego. That's the plan. Actually, there's an image that was floating around, kind of a redacted image that was floating around the last year or so. But that's been updated. We have a really cool promotional poster and some other visuals that we'll use to promote and present at San Diego. So,
Oh, awesome.
yeah, our hope is to have uh, have this series come back sometime late this year or very early next year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
That's the
All
plan.
right. Well,
Yep.
that's going to be awesome. Because, I
Yep.
mean, it's, I think what the series ended in, I think 2018, issue 15 was the last one. And since then, it's been like we've gotten trades and obviously the omnibus. I guess, how has it been like, are you itching to come back, or are you kind of like enjoying the success and the fact, letting people catch up with it and read it and all that? Like, I guess like, yeah, I mean, how's it been like just to sit back a little bit and kind of watch it do what it do?
It's been enjoyable to see fans appreciate it and get new fans discovering it and seeing it reach these different corners of fandom. It's being taught in schools,
Oh, wow.
universities as curriculum, which is pretty mind-boggling, to be honest with you.
Ain't it? Yeah.
And so it's one of those books, but it was honestly one of those books that I felt like, especially unfortunately to some degree, that the times that we're in from a social standpoint, and I'll say social. I wouldn't even say political. I think it's just all social, in that's kind of being heightened through the political scope. In this space that we're in now, the book has even more. It resonates even more. I think it's partly why it's been being used in schools, institutions right now as part of a curriculum. Kind of a cool, semi-cool story. I got flag. Our book got flagged in Pensacola, Florida, at a
Oh,
con.
damn. I was really hoping. I was like, is there another Pensacola in the state in the country? No, of course, of course. I'm sorry,
It's
Sanford, on
Florida,
behalf of
man. It's
Florida.
Florida. It's Florida,
I
man.
know. I
I,
know.
I would be disappointed if we didn't get any kind of flags at this point. Like that means we're doing
Yeah,
something if they're concerned about our
yeah.
story.
You know what it is? It's the damn. What are they called in the comic? It's the damn Gino. Gino.
Yeah, yeah,
It's the damn Gino at work,
yeah,
man. Real life
yeah,
Gino's at work.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you'll dig where we're going with that whole concept in
Hmm.
the next arc as well. Like we took that whole concept of the Genu, and we put a little we put a little bit of what's happening in our society now, or how it's being perceived now. Um, this country, the history of this country, the whole uh, how people view this country through the rose-colored glasses. We use a lot of that in the next story arc to portray the next level of threats and monsters out there.
I know. I'm excited now. I didn't think I was going to get an answer as far as like a timeline, much less that soon. So definitely sign me up. And I want to share something here. I had read an article uh, where you were talking about that when you were coming up with Bitterroot, and you and Chuck Brown and David Walker were trying to figure out like how we're going to promote this and getting in front of people. You guys were talking about, or you specifically were talking about like having a little bit of hesitance and to like go to comic conventions and go the traditional route in the traditional industry, and how you guys decided to go outside of the traditional industry and channels to get a book out there. But instead, you guys went to here you say, instead of a trade show or just conventions, we did interviews on Black radio, hip hop radio with DJ Eclipse, Sirius XM, Shade 45, and I don't know. Once again, I guess it ties back to what the compliment I gave you earlier of like always injecting the spirit of hip hop in there. And I thought this was so, it sounds corny saying it, but it is really hip hop, right? Like the fundamental essence of hip hop and like that grassroots and making, thinking outside the box and making do. I guess, do you have any? What advice would you give to like a comic creator that's trying to get their vision and their story out there, and they want to maybe go outside of the box? Like, is there anything that you learned from that experience of, going the non-traditional route that you would pass down to the next generation?
I think the biggest thing is that there is an audience outside of comics that like stories, stories that that directly speak to them. That's why we went to those. We went through those outlets, is because we knew that those outlets there was something in our stories that bridged, that was a bridge to that particular target, that particular group of folks, because we had stories that that resonated in those spaces, and we knew that they weren't necessarily connected to the comic space, but they liked those stories, and we try to educate them on how there are more stories like that, like what we're trying to present. But you would have to, um, pursue them in the spaces, in the comic, graphic novel space, if you will. So just, trying to educate them on what our story is about, but also allowing them to see that there are more stories that they can pursue. That was kind of the intention from the beginning, even if it wasn't necessarily Bitterroot, just in the fact that we're Black creators, creating stories that have diverse characters, that alone sometimes can be missed from that audience, because they're not seeing it per se as immediately. So we try to make it more immediate to that space.
That's well said. I don't know if you remember this, but last year at New York Comic Con, you were on a panel with Rob Markman, Bill Sienkiewicz, and I'm drawing a blank on some of the other folks that were on there, but the panel was about basically the intersection of hip hop and comic books.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat in on that panel, and I recorded an episode live from New York Comic Con, and I said it was the best panel I ever sat on. It was like I was in like I was in heaven. I was like, I'm sitting here hearing people talk about comic books and hip hop, an intersection that I firmly believe exists, and there's a reason why both of those worlds tend to like dabble with each other and always seem to make sense when they do happen and done correctly. And I guess I'm just gonna have to put you on the spot here. What music do you listen to when you're creating? And then I guess like the go-to question for all self-described hip hop heads is, what's your top 5 favorite albums, man? Do you have albums that are your go-to, that are your personal favorite? Like, could you compile them into a top 5?
Yeah, you definitely made this last question is a doozy.
We go with a bang.
You know what's interesting is I don't listen to hip hop as much when I'm working as you think. I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Okay.
I listen to a lot of a lot of podcasts. I listen to NPR, which is
it's like the gold standard of podcasting. Like
yeah.
when I was first trying to get into a podcasting, it was like, that was my bar, was like, how are they doing it, and then how do I add my flair to it? What are some of the podcasts in your queue?
Oh, man. Let's see. 11 o'clock comics. Those guys are good. Off
Oh,
panel.
hell yeah.
Off panel. Those guys.
Yeah, big shout out to David. Yeah.
David is cool. Word Balloon, the OG.
Yeah, John Citronis.
Yeah. Your podcast.
I appreciate it, Sanford.
Yeah. So a lot of those types. Great. For and this is not I guess this is a bit of a self promotion, but I listen to Felix. Watch his podcast. He does this unboxing of live unboxing of different artists that he represents. That's always fun whenever he does one of those. Yeah, but I do, trust me, I listen to a lot of hip hop, but it's not every day per se. I have to be kind of in a place where whatever I'm working on, I could let that play in the background and enjoy it. So yeah.
What's the last album, whether it be hip hop or just anything in general? What's the last album that you've had on that maybe you ran it back a few times or you really enjoyed? I guess what's the last album that really stood out to you?
Dude, I honestly don't listen to albums like that anymore, man. There's a few that I'm excited about that's coming. But I listen to so much like compilation stuff. Like, is this a mixture of? I'm just kind of wired that way now.
Okay.
Because I'm so. Look, it's either Illmatic or Cuban Links or 36 Chamber. Like, if it's not on that level, it's hard for me to get past. Like, those are such in high regard that it. But I am looking forward to this new Common Pete Rock album. That's got me pretty excited about that. Yeah, I'm excited about this Nas premiere album.
Because they dropped the song together. I think like last week.
They did a song a few weeks ago. So we'll see if it's for real. I do believe they got enough material to do it, right? It's just a matter of if their egos can allow it to happen. That's just me. I don't know.
No, I would say it's almost maybe more of a time thing. And a part of me wishes that they would have done this much earlier, like when they were, not saying that they're not, putting out great music now, but, there's definitely something, I think there's a missed opportunity having waited this long. But you're right. If you were to make your own little compilation, I mean, there's plenty of compilations and mixtapes out there that combine them two together. It would be amazing.
Yeah.
But I guess, I hear you say that you listen to a lot of comic podcasts, and I find that interesting because I don't know. I mean, personally speaking, I am always, I guess, working on the podcast and thinking and talking comics that none of my podcasts are comic related. Like, you don't ever get tired of like hearing about comics and hearing about the process and all that, or I guess what keeps you like listening and wanting to, what keeps you listening to comics for all that long?
Well, don't get me wrong. It's not the only podcast that I listen to, but those are the ones that I tend to listen to. Mainly when we're, if we're talking about comic related stuff, if I listen, it will be those podcasts.
Got it.
I actually blurb without fear that those guys, I listen to those guys, or at least I listen to that podcast as well. But in terms of just, dude, I've got so many. I got Complex. They're the music interviews. With obviously with all this stuff happening with Kendrick and Drake, I went down the rabbit hole of every interview Kendrick has ever done in the last 7 years or so, and it's kind of wild how those interviews really it's a lot like creating comics. It's like the way he tells the stories about how he creates his music. I think all artists kind of think similar, whether it's music or visual. So any kind of process podcasts, I would say, whether it's music or visuals or whatever, how to. Sometimes I can go down a rabbit hole of watching a lot of history. Obviously with Bitterroot, those come in handy. Watching, listening to those podcasts. A lot of audiobooks. I haven't done an audiobook in a while. The last one I did was the biography, or well, it's not a biography. It is a biography of Jay Dilla.
The Dilla Time book.
Yeah, the Dilla Time book.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That book was pretty fascinating.
Sanford, I got one more question for you. This is an extremely easy one, but when folks hear this episode and they're convinced to go pick up Doom #1 that's in shops right now, I guess what do you want them to take away from it? Is there? I mean, obviously, all artists, tend to say like, whatever they get out of it is what they get out of it. But is there any impression or any hopes that you personally have, like, man, I hope this does X, Y, Z, or it gets them to think like, this?
Like you mentioned earlier, it's a love letter to the character Doom. It's a love letter, honestly, to the Marvel Universe. Like what impacted me as a young kid growing up when I first dove into the Marvel Universe, especially from the galactic standpoint of it, and the grandness of the Marvel Universe, and honestly, just the way that the when we were coming up, there were always those I call them seminal moments through a single story, or some moment that made you want to go back to that story, revisit that story, the death of Captain Marvel, even to some degree, in many ways, the Doctor Doom, Doctor Strange, when he goes to hell to,
Triumph and Torment,
Triumph and Torment, just trying to, touch on those moments through this story is what I'm paying homage to.
Well said. And you know what, personally speaking, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think mission success, it definitely, I mean, we have a saying here on the show that when a comic's really good, it's got to respect your time and your pockets or in your wallet. And I think you hit both of those just fine. So
cool.
Thank you for putting that comic book out. Obviously big shout outs to Jonathan Hickman and Rachel Rosenberg for the assist. And I can't recommend it enough to everyone that's tuning in, whether you are a Doctor Doom diehard or a completely new reader. I think Doom #1 is a fantastic comic book. It respects your time and your wallet, and it's just one of those one shots that I think people are going to be talking about for a while. Sanford, I'm gonna have links to your Twitter, your all of your social medias in the show notes. I'll also have some previews to the Doctor Doom comic book, or the Doom comic book, in the show notes. But is there anything else that you want to say? Anything you want to plug, or anything that we might have missed?
Oh no, man! I think we covered everything, man, from Doom to AC/DC. I think there's nothing else to talk about, man. Thanks to everyone. Thank you, man. Thank you for the support, and thank you everyone out there.
Hell yeah, my pleasure, man. You're welcome back on the show anytime, and I look forward to the release of Bitterroot, and as well as seeing the success of everything else you got going on, Sanford.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you again.